I've been grinding away to get my Dynasty rankings updated, and we're going to be looking at rookies here with this video. And obviously, a lot has changed since the last time we talked about these guys. Starting off tier 1, coming into this season, Bijan Robinson was by himself, and we still have a player by himself, but this time it's going to be CJ Stroud. To look at CJ Stroud and to try to put this season into context is kind of insane, because right now he is second in the NFL in passing yards, only behind Sam Howell. And yeah, I know you're going to say, well, Mason, come on. I mean, you can just rack up garbage time stats, aka look at Sam Howell and be a very inefficient and be a very bad quarterback overall. Well, while Sam Howell, is down at the bottom of the league, 6.4 adjusted yards per pass attempt, Howell's not good. CJ Stroud, 8.7 adjusted yards per pass attempt. This is second in the NFL, only behind Brock Purdy. So from an efficiency standpoint, CJ Stroud has been a top 3 quarterback. From a volume standpoint, CJ Stroud has been a top 3 quarterback as well. It's not like this is a phenomenal situation. I know people got really upset with me on Twitter when I said that the reason that CJ Stroud's finding this success is because of himself and not the supporting cast. I mean, I think the supporting cast of Devin Singletary, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, Nico Collins, honestly, probably a slightly below supporting cast in the NFL, even if Tank Dell is exciting, and obviously we'll talk about him a little bit later on. But yeah, I mean, hard to not have CJ Stroud in his own tier. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we will go Bijan Robinson. Now, if we're looking at Bijan here, of course, hook 'em horns. You know, this is my guy, and of course, I'm going to be rooting for him. But ultimately, we really haven't seen this coaching staff decide to use him in that true bell cow type role, where you are looking at Bijan averaging about 12.8 carries per game. From a target share perspective, I mean, he's had 49 targets on the season, which is actually pretty high considering the fact that there's not a lot of passing volume to go around in Atlanta. I still have missed the running back 1 overall in our Dynasty rankings, just because obviously in Dynasty, we want to invest into these running backs on their rookie contracts. And speaking of that, we will go with Jahmyr Gibbs at 3 as well. Gibbs started off a little slower. Obviously, Montgomery looked great, but Jahmyr Gibbs has really come on as of late, particularly as a receiver as well, where Jahmyr Gibbs is sitting here with 42 targets so far with 9 games played. So Jahmyr Gibbs is averaging about 5-6 targets per contest as a rookie. He's now getting involvement as a goal line back at the same time. And yeah, he's going to be in a committee, and he'll probably always be in a committee. You're never drafting Jahmyr Gibbs expecting him to turn into prime Ezekiel Elliott, prime Dalvin Cook. No, you're drafting him hoping that he's going to turn into prime Alvin Kamara, where he doesn't need the 20 carries per game. He just needs some involvement in the red zone in the receiving skill set to be elite. Now, going over to Anthony Richardson at 4, Anthony Richardson's a very difficult player to rank, right? Because if you're just looking long-term, if you're looking at 2024 and beyond, you can make an argument to go through and put Anthony Richardson over Jahmyr Gibbs in a superflex format, but you're not going to get any production this year for him. So I do think that you have to put a slight discount from what we saw with Anthony Richardson at the beginning of the year, though. Is this a quarterback that's going to have a lot of rushing upside? He looked very good. It's just, can he stay healthy with this style of play, which is always a little bit of a concern. Now, dropping down to our next tier. It's brutal to see the fall of Bryce Young, where if you go back and look at what we had with quarterbacks in the NFL with their passing totals, while CJ Stroud is at the very top of the NFL with both efficiency and volume, Bryce Young is at the very bottom of the NFL in both categories as well. Bryce Young, so far this season, has had 4.8 adjusted yards per pass attempt. I can't really even put into context exactly how bad this is. I mean, you had Daniel Jones giving you a 4.2. Daniel Jones, horrendous as well. But outside of that, the only other quarterbacks to be under 6 have been Joshua Dobbs, Ryan Tannehill, Jimmy Garoppolo, Aiden O'Connell, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. Zach Wilson, obviously the laughingstock of the NFL, 5.4 adjusted yards per pass attempt compared to Bryce Young at 4.8. Now, while I understand there are going to be a million people in the comment section screaming, Mason, it's not his fault. Mason, look at the offensive line. Look at the weapons. Look at the coaching staff. Look at the owner. I agree with you. I mean, yes, it's a horrible situation. But is that situation getting better anytime soon? No. So it doesn't matter if you want to sit here and make the argument, well, it's the situation, it's not Bryce Young, or it's Bryce Young, it's not the situation. Regardless of whatever you argue here, you're in a spot where he's not going to be scoring points anytime soon. Clearly does have the name appeal, though, where if you do get that year 2 bump, he can be right back up there with dynasty value. Now, I do want to talk about how we are breaking these guys down compared to 2024 rookies. So you'll notice on flogfantasy.com, we actually just went out there and updated our rankings, including 2024 rookie picks. We broke it down by 2024 early first, mid first, late second, and then obviously all the way down the line. We even included 2025 rookie picks in there as well. But we have this tier of guys, essentially the top 4 being ahead of early and mid first round picks. Now, of course, if you have the 101, you'd rather have that over Jahmyr Gibbs and Anthony Richardson. If you have the 102, maybe you'd rather have that over Anthony Richardson. But early first, we're going to be looking at like 101 to 104. So I think we have the early first in Anthony Richardson and Jahmyr Gibbs all back to back to back. Then we have the mid first right alongside Bryce Young. So just to give you some context with those rookie picks, and also you can check out those value of the rookie picks in the community rankings on flogfantasy.com. That's going to be free for everybody. Great set of data if you want to be using that for your dynasty leagues this year. And we have an updated dynasty trade calculator on flogfantasy.com where you can put your exact league settings in there and get some realistic trade values, which I am really excited about. But outside of that, in this tier, Jordan Addison at 6. With Addison, obviously, he showed you the talent, right? I mean, Addison looks phenomenal. The issue is, I mean, yeah, the Cousins injury. This is a pretty serious injury as well. We don't really know the long-term situation at quarterback. And we can assume Justin Jefferson is there for the long term, right? So you're never really going to be the wide receiver 1. And now I know JSN at 7. Maybe this is going to be a little bit more controversial, but I mean, I don't know with Jackson Smith and Jigba, still a phenomenal prospect. You still saw flashes as well. And if you're looking at the Seattle wide receiver room for the long term, really it's going to be JSN and DK Metcalf, right? I think you take that Tyler Lockett production, move that over to JSN, and that's a little more realistic on what we can expect. Maybe it was always unrealistic to expect JSN to do anything year 1 with both Metcalf and Lockett in town. Now, dropping down to our next tier, the guy that I got a lot of players wrong this rookie season, but one of the players I got most wrong, Sam Laporta. I mean, I typically not drafting rookie tight ends. I'll say, let me see them produce, then I'll buy in. And Sam Laporta was phenomenal. I mean, right out the gate as well. It did not take him any time to ramp up. I'm going to have a video coming out very soon about the historical performances that we have seen from this year's rookie class at tight ends. And yeah, well, I mean, we'll throw Dalton Kincaid in here at 9 as well. I know it seems like we're ranking them pretty low. It's because a lot of these other rookies are very exciting, right? But just don't overlook how good this rookie tight end class has been compared to historical expectations. And I have both these tight ends, if you look at my rankings on flogfantasy.com right now, currently sitting at tight end 2 and tight end 3, only behind TJ Hawkinson. But let's go ahead and let's look at what we have with Zay Flowers at 10. Now we'll go Tank Dell right after. I know everybody's going to be throwing crap at me for this tier. This tier is very hard to rank. All these players have been very exciting. I'm going to go Flowers over Tank Dell just because I think the prospect profile was a little bit better with Zay Flowers, where you have the continued story of the round 1 pick who goes to the NFL, who shows a lot here, right? I understand it's not as good as what we've had with Tank Dell, and we just made an entire video talking about why we missed on Tank Dell and what we can expect reasonably going forward. So yeah, I think you can be very excited about both these players. And Devon Achane at 12, maybe we're too low on Achane as well. Now, my thing with Devon Achane is it's all about the size here. Now, I'm willing to throw in the talent. I'm willing to say, okay, well, size doesn't matter whatsoever if we were looking at wide receivers based off the trends that we are looking at over the past 3 seasons. However, at running back, I don't necessarily know if it's easy to say that is the case just yet, because we know that size is going to be a limiting factor in the amount of work a running back can handle before they get injured. And while Achane has looked like one of the best players in this entire rookie class when he has the ball in his hands, still, being 188 pounds, he's had 39 carries this season, right? So he has shown us that he can be the most efficient player in the NFL in a very small sample, What I want to see from Achane for him to continue to move up these rankings and possibly get ahead of JSN, ahead of Addison, is I need to see him actually be able to handle a larger workload. And I want to see what the production looks like when the efficiency comes down just a bit. Now, that's not to say I don't like Achane. Really, anybody in this tier, such as Puka as our next guy, right? You can rearrange. That's why we make this as a tier list where 8 through 13, really, you can jumble these around and go in whatever order you want. I just really would urge you, these guys like Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith, and Jigba that haven't completely face planted in year one, when they had the better prospect profiles, I'm probably going to be sticking with those guys for the time being. Of course, we'll see how all these players in the year, and maybe by the time we get to the offseason, we can start to move some of these tier 4 options up to tier 3. Now, dropping down to our next tier, we're going to go Rashee Rice at 14. With Rice, I mean, we saw the breakout last week, and this is a wide receiver that is continuously just taking more and more when it comes to the overall snaps that you have in KC. The primary issue that you've been looking at with Rashee Rice as of late is this is just simply a wide receiver that isn't playing enough to really dominate here in Kansas City. But if he does just continue to see more work, I think you can be excited about him in the long term. Josh Downs will be our next guy at 15. Downs also dominating target volume in Indy. He's right there with Michael Pittman. Now, what I'm a little bit interested in is how Downs will play with Anthony Richardson, right? Because how Anthony Richardson is advertised is he's advertised as a gunslinging quarterback that's never really going to be chucking the ball down. He's either going to be running himself or he's going to be looking to chunk the ball downfield 40 plus yards. I mean, he has that Josh Allen in him, right? So it is interesting. Maybe you could say, well, Gardner Minshew is better for Josh Downs than Anthony Richardson would be, but I really like Josh Downs as a prospect. My really only hesitation from going all in on Downs, even though he's my second most drafted wide receiver on Underdog this year, was essentially the size, but looks like that's no longer a concern. Zach Charbonnet will be our next guy at 16. I mean, with Charbonnet, he showed us that he's 100% going to be the receiving back in Seattle. Even before the Kenneth Walker injury, Zach Charbonnet was playing on every single third down, every single 2-minute drill snap as well. So yeah, we already know that we have that role, and if Walker were to go down, we've seen the snaps, and we've seen the fact that Charbonnet will be a 3-down bell cow. Now we'll go Will Levis at 17. With Levis, he's had some flashes. Now I'm very biased. We got to interview the guy at the draft, and he was just so damn nice to us, and honestly had no reason to be. So I really am rooting for him. Maybe we should have him behind Quentin Johnston here. What I am willing to throw in the towel and say, yeah, Will Levis been very disappointing in this way is he has 12 rushing yards on the season, right? I mean, you go back to his time in Kentucky, he had some years where he really went out there and ran the ball, and he had another year at the very end where he didn't rush the ball at all. Well, it looks like he's going to be a pocket passing option, so the rushing upside simply may not be there. Now, our last guy in this tier will be Quentin Johnston. Now, I know it seems like he's extremely low, but I mean, I like Quentin Johnston going into this past season. I was looking at him going, okay, well, he breaks out as a freshman, dominates as a sophomore, declares as a junior, and gets drafted around 1 in the NFL draft, goes to a team with an elite level quarterback. What do we want? I mean, we kind of want all those boxes. So, I mean, I was not one of these smart people that were screaming, avoid, 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 Quentin Johnston's a bum. I wish I was smart enough to identify that. Sadly, I was not. But what I can say is I can say, yeah, throw in the towel. If you can move off of Quentin Johnston and you can get to Puka, you can get to Achane, you can get to Dell, you can get to Flowers, you can get to Kincaid, you can get to Laporta. If you can get to any of those players inside the top 13 of these rankings that are a tier ahead of Quentin Johnston, I'm going to move off of them. Because you've had an injury to both Mike Williams, an injury to Joshua Palmer, at times an injury to Austin Eckler, where Quentin Johnston has had every opportunity to succeed in this offense. And the man has 190 receiving yards. It's almost unbelievable. If you would have told me how many players would have got injured in Los Angeles this year, I would have been drafting Quentin Johnston as wide receiver 1 in redraft leagues. But, I mean, it's crazy to see him absolutely face plant. And Justin Herbert is currently 9th in the NFL in passing yards, so it's not like Herbert's been bad. Now, dropping down to our next tier, Jayden Reed has shown flashes. The issue with Jayden Reed is long-term here. You still have Christian Watson. You still have Romeo Doubs. And ultimately, you have a very bad offense as well, right? We don't really know what the long-term situation is going to be like with Jordan Love here. Now, Roschon Johnson will be our next running back at 20. Roschon's shown some flashes. I mean, he just looked good this past primetime game, but ultimately, he hasn't really been able to leapfrog and really take over in year one. And while Khalil Herbert has been fine, right? I mean, Khalil Herbert did get injured. At a point, it was like him or Deonta Foreman, someone that just got signed. He didn't really do much. Now, Tyjae Spears will be our next running back. Tyjae Spears has actually gone through and taken a considerable amount of snaps from Derrick Henry. Now, those snaps haven't really turned into too much in terms of an actual fantasy output. Now, I do want to talk about a mistake a lot of people make in Dynasty, and that they go through and they look at someone like Tyjae Spears, and they just think, okay, Derrick Henry may not be here next year. That immediately makes Tyjae Spears the starting. That's not really how it works, right? I mean, yes, we can automatically pencil in guys like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs to be the starting running back long-term and to have that job when they're on their rookie deal and the team invested so much into them. But if you're a player like Tyjae Spears, if you're a player like even, say, Rachaad White, Brian Robinson, who had great years this year, if you don't really have the team investment, you have no idea what the team's going to do in the offseason. They very easily could go out there and they very easily could just sign a cheap vet, turn it into a running back by committee. They could view Tyjae Spears just as the third down back and find someone to replace Derrick Henry even if Henry were to leave. So don't think, oh, okay, Derrick Henry's for sure gone. That means Tyjae Spears has to be great. No, I mean, hopefully he is, but really, you can't just say 1 + 1 = 2 there because there's always going to be that outside variable. Now, Marvin Mims will be our next wide receiver at 22. With Mims, I mean, he does have the team investment, was a second-round pick. I mean, has shown flashes as well. And maybe you say, oh, you have no Courtland Sutton, you have no Jerry Jeudy in the long term. What does this look like? I don't know what it looks like. But, I mean, there are a lot of moving parts. I liked him as a prospect. Still a very young wide receiver. I think you can take a shot. Jonathan Mingo will be the next guy at 23. Y'all know we spent all offseason screaming downs, downs, downs over Mingo, Mingo, Mingo. I thought Jonathan Mingo's a very overrated player at the time he was drafted. But here in the long term, the Carolina Panthers don't really have anything, right? I mean, DJ Chark, face planted. Adam Thielen may not be here next year. And if he is, he may not be anything at all. So maybe Jonathan Mingo is the wide receiver 1 starting next season. And there are a lot of players that we can throw here at 24. I do want to just talk about Luke Musgrave just for a minute. I mean, with Musgrave, he showed flashes at the beginning of the year, and I know he's going to be overshadowed based off what we had with those other rookie tight ends, such as Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid. But I really do want to reiterate just exactly how good those rookie tight end seasons were. And just because Musgrave didn't turn into Sam Laporta doesn't mean he's not going to be anything next year. And you can throw Michael Mayer into the same box, right? I mean, maybe next year Michael Mayer turns into like Trey McBride this season. Now, I do want to encourage y'all, please go over to flockfantasy.com, completely free. Just play around with our community rankings. And there you can also check out the trade calculator for free as well. We're trying to make all these tools to help you the best that we can in your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. And yeah, the more that y'all go on that community page, the better data points that we're going to be able to get y'all so we can continue to improve that Dynasty trade calculator, which is the first trade calculator to accurately take into your league settings into account when making trades. So I'm excited we were able to hook y'all up with that. You can find that link to flockfantasy.com in the description, comment section. Like I said, those things are free on the site, so you can play around and see what you like and hopefully get some value. But thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate you. I really hope you have a great day and really hope we get to see you out with a video sometime soon.